In the last, I would say 5 to 10 years, the GameCube went from being this sort of cult classic of a game console to really being something that a lot of people are nostalgic about. I think people that didn't even grow up with the GameCube are nostalgic about the GameCube. That's kind of how big of a deal it seems like it's become. The price of these games have kind of skyrocketed as a response, but the GameCube really is the ultimate console when it comes to emulation, when you consider the fact that it really is the most recent console that has super rock solid emulation via Dolphin, and as a result, the GameCube is really, I think, a legend in the emulation space. The Dolphin emulator works well with so many games, and it's playable on so many different platforms. Obviously the computer, but you go into things like an Android phone. I mean, that's really surprising to me that you're able to have a GameCube experience in the phone that's in your pocket. Just the fact that it's powerful enough to do that is remarkable to me. Even on Xbox, with the Xbox Series consoles via RetroArch on there, I've talked about in the past, you're able to play GameCube games. You're able to do it in an upscaled nature where you can put these games in 1080p. On PC, you can get them into 4K. You can play around with the textures for some of these games to make them look even better than they originally did on the GameCube. And I think that the library that this system has, being so nostalgic for a lot of people, and coming from a time period that really is, I think, the golden age, or the end of the golden age of gaming, when you consider the fact that these games didn't have online updates. They were complete games out of the box, and this is the most recent platform that you can emulate in this really smooth fashion. The PlayStation 2 is getting there, but add in the fact that the file sizes on these games are not overwhelmingly large. Take a look at, a game that released on multiple platforms: the Xbox, the PlayStation 2, the GameCube. The GameCube one's going to have the smallest file type, which matters if you want to have kind of a stockpile of a ton of different games on these consoles to be able to emulate and play, and you want to do it in a way that doesn't take up a massive amount of hard drive space. Every single GameCube game is like 1.5 gigabytes in size. They're all standardized in that way, and you can get different file formats besides, say an ISO that does have, some of that excess data taken out and it's just stripped down to just the bare game files. And I mean, for the quality of the game you're getting in a GameCube title, that's really impressive that it's packed into 1.5 gigabytes when you consider the size of modern games, obviously being much larger in size due to their HD nature. 4K, whatnot, bigger textures, bigger world, bigger everything, are now tens of maybe even 100 plus gigabytes in size. If you take a look at AliExpress, there's a ton of cheap Chinese consoles that are even put out for $50 or $100 that can emulate a ton of different things, and really oftentimes this emulation ends at the Dreamcast. My guess is we're probably 5, 3, maybe even less years away from seeing Chinese consoles that are running Dolphin, that are able to just kind of be an emulator set-top box that even can run GameCube games. Now, I think that at that price point, that's really impressive, and obviously we all wish Nintendo would release a GameCube Mini. Obviously, they won't do this either because of licensing issues or because of their desire to just re-release the games in an HD version on a newer console, sell it for $60 once again. But, how many Dreamcast games do you ever see Nintendo release in a way that's actually, not some sort of limited time, get your Super Mario Sunshine, before we prematurely cease production and also take it off the digital storefronts? So instead, I would expect a Chinese company to release a product like this, if they haven't already, and maybe it's just at a higher price point than what I've seen on AliExpress. Obviously, these systems can be a bit shoddily made, but in my opinion, you don't really need one. The Nintendo Wii kind of already does this job for you. I've talked a lot on this channel in the past about how the Wii is really a totally underrated emulation device that's sold like gangbusters and has just a ton of them out there. So if you want to get a Wii today, I know they've went up in price some, but they're still relatively affordable. And the fact that they can play GameCube games natively off the disc with a real GameCube controller, might I add, and GameCube memory cards, which I think is a big deal, that you can plug a true GameCube controller into the Wii, and it actually has the ports for it, unlike any of these other emulation devices, and you can play these games on a modded Wii using Nintendo, is a huge deal and one of the most slept on features about the Wii that really just elevates this to another level. If you have GameCube ISOs that you want to play, the fact again that you can play them on a Wii, you can play them on an Xbox Series system, you can play them on your computer, you can play them on your phone. The games in this library are great. Many of them are very nostalgic titles for a lot of people, and even things like maybe Ratatouille the video game, which is a totally random licensed game that was released on this platform, and others, is a game that might be nostalgic for some people. Maybe that's one of the first video games you ever played, was some random licensed game on the GameCube. These games on this platform hold a lot of nostalgia. I think the bad games on this platform aren't necessarily as bad as you'll make them out to be, because they aren't totally broken. They were shipped as complete games because there was no online update to put out later on. These are complete games that are playable games, and I think that the wealth of the library is very enjoyable. Thanks to the efforts of game preservationists, games from this platform are pretty well backed up. In fact, I don't even know of any notable ones that are missing that actually got full retail releases when you consider the PlayStation 2, the original Xbox, and the GameCube. But I think that, as history will show, the GameCube version will become the definitive version to play outside of the original hardware. Sure, the Xbox version oftentimes is the definitive version, but I think that when it comes to being able to play the game later, if you're not playing it on the original hardware, the definitive version to play will end up being the GameCube version. I've seen it with many different titles. Most recently, it was Need for Speed Most Wanted from 2005. It has a GameCube version that wasn't the best version at release. It still lacks behind the Xbox 360 version, but if you're playing it on emulator, you can get those textures from the Xbox 360 version and really take the GameCube version a step above the original Xbox or PlayStation 2 version. It's this type of support that in the long term, I believe, will make the GameCube be an absolute legend in the emulation space, in much of the same way that I think the PlayStation is. I mean, when you look at a platform that has a wide array of games available for it to emulate, the PlayStation is definitely one worth taking a look at, but the GameCube is newer and is going to give you a little bit deeper experiences, just solely because the games are newer and some people are interested in a little bit more modernized graphics that can come with the GameCube. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Bailey, and I will see you in the next video.